Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Yesterday, we ended up getting a massive Warzone dev blog, if you will, detailing how they are making some pretty drastic changes to Warzone gameplay in regards to weapons, attachments, builds, loadouts, one of the core components of Warzone here. This year, they're really going all in on Warzone being unique when it comes to weapon identity. And for the most part, as we go through this blog, I think it reveals a lot of very good news for the meta going forward and weapon balance going forward as well. So we've got this blog to detail Warzone Road to Season 1, weapons, attachments, and more. Real quick though, before we dive into all this blog, I gotta show you guys something pretty cool. Hey everyone, back when I did my 1,000,000 subscriber video, I mentioned in that I had to still apply for the golden plaque. Big deal, obviously, when you hit 1,000,000 subscribers, and it takes some time to go through the process, get it shipped out. But once I got it, I would include unboxing it with you guys in a video. And the time has come because I just got this package from YouTube. And inside of it, there's a styrofoam sheet covering something very cool. So if I were to take the styrofoam sheet off, there is first a note that I have to read from YouTube that says, "You did it. One mission, one channel, and one more thing. 1,000,000 subscribers. Congratulations. You have started with just a few viewers, but your voice, passion, and creativity have now touched the lives of people around the world, and the community you've built is enriched by the stories you've shared as you bring people together. To honor this milestone, we're proud to present you with the Gold Creator Award. We hope this special recognition will remind you of how much you mean to so many. Every day you are redefining how content is created and watched, one voice and one video at a time. It's a privilege to be a part of your journey. We can't wait to see what you do next." And the YouTube CEO, Neil Mohan, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, signed it. So that's pretty cool. There's also, what is this? A note? I don't know. I guess this is a certification thing. I'm not sure. But what really matters is this right here. There's even more stuff here. There's so many pamphlets. Look at that. 1,000,000 subscribers, and they spelled it correctly, which is always a concern because even when I fill out things correctly and I type WhosImmortal, sometimes they say who is immortal. They put an extra I in there. So I'm glad that it's the correct spelling. But very cool stuff. You guys notice this in the background behind the Christmas tree now, because that's where it's getting hung up, and I'll move the silver one up a little bit. So once again, huge thank you for that. I can't wait to put that up in the background here. But diving into this blog, they say, "This year, our approach to weapon balance and attachment design centers on one key philosophy: expanding build diversity and making every decision meaningful. We want every loadout choice, every barrel, stock, and muzzle to matter. To achieve this, we are introducing frequent meta shakeups, clearer roles for each weapon category, and attachment options that encourage distinct playstyles rather than builds that attempt to do everything." So obviously, a big problem, especially with like BO6 Warzone, you could have used a meta build on day one of the integration, and it probably still would have been very good at the end of the integration. Exact same build, everything. Like, the meta just did not change for all of BO6 Warzone. It was a snooze fest. MW3 Warzone, there were different weapons, but every build was kind of the same. You're using the same optics, the same suppressor, the same barrel on like everything, basically. There's been very little diversity, and that's because Warzone has been tethered to the multiplayer experience when it comes to attachment balancing and a lot of different weapon balancing as well, even. So they're changing things up now, and I think it's going to be really good. So they say, to kick this off, we are committing to updating our Warzone meta upwards of 4 times per season. So keep in mind, seasons are usually 8 to 10 weeks in length. That means roughly every 2 weeks, we're going to be seeing some kind of meta update. Now, I'm hoping this isn't the case of, okay, this weapon's the #1 meta, and in 2 weeks, it's nerfed, and now there's another new #1 meta. I hope it's the case of, hey, this is the #1 meta, then in 2 weeks time, if it's still like crazy good because it's not broken, it's just really dominant, we're going to buff another gun so that it competes right there with it, rather than having to nerf every meta so that you spend your time, you level a gun, you max it out, and then in 2 weeks time it's nerfed and it's no longer usable. I hope that's not the case. We believe that keeping this core component consistently evolving creates a more interesting and fluid experience. I would agree. Our primary balancing efforts will focus on the pool of new Black Ops 7 weapons introduced to Warzone in the Season 1 updates. Weapons from prior chapters will remain available for players who want to revisit older blueprints or enjoy them for nostalgia. This is a really important sentence here. This is basically them saying the quiet part out loud. BO6 weapons, MW3 weapons, MW2 weapons, they're all going to be in the game. they're not going to be a focus for these updates here. They are there for nostalgia. They're not there for a competitive purpose. So I would not expect your BO6 XM4 to be the meta or your MW3 Car 98K to be the meta. Those guns are not going to be receiving as much attention or any attention at all, potentially, with these updates. The focus is BO7 here. From there, our goal is to ensure that every weapon class feels unique. Rifles, SMGs, LMGs, and snipers should each offer something specific to the player who chooses them. To reinforce this, we have capped attachments at 5 per weapon, removing the gunfighter wildcard to make each selection matter more. So there is no wildcards this year. So gunfighter does not exist. It is only 5 attachments per weapon here. That way you're not going to have a gun that has the max mobility and max range and max velocity because you just have 8 attachments on there and there's no thought process behind the build. You're just picking every single attachment there is, basically. Overkill, which had become the overwhelmingly popular choice, has also been removed and is now just the default, so you can have an automatic primary and secondary whenever you want. I think Warzone is at its best when you have that. We've also reworked low value or redundant attachments to encourage meaningful trade-offs that require players to commit to a clear strength instead of covering every possible weakness. So if you want range, you're going to have to go in on range. If you want control, you're going to have to go in and control and probably sacrifice some mobility. You can't get an insanely fast ADS speed and sprint to fire speed and also have absolutely no recoil over 70 meters in distance, right? So they want trade-offs there, and that's probably going to be really good for weapon balancing and weapon builds, I hope. For the first time, and this is what's so important, attachments in Warzone now feature stats that are entirely unique and separate from multiplayer. This means that every tuning decision has been shaped specifically for Warzone pacing, engagement distances, and time to kill. The difference will be immediately noticeable. Attachments now offer more defined benefits, clearer trade-offs, and a stronger sense of class identity across the entire sandbox. This is so huge because in the past, in multiplayer, you'd have a fantastic barrel, and then they'd adjust it, and then it would kill it in Warzone, or they'd buff a rear grip in multiplayer, and it make it the absolute meta in Warzone, and then there was no reason to change off anything else. Now you actually have specific stats for Warzone, which means the tuning and the balancing here throughout the seasons, those 4 times per season updates, will be way more meaningful and way more impactful, and they'll be able to do a lot more rather than being stuck by what they need to do for multiplayer instead. So that is phenomenal and really, really important news. Key systems have been tuned to preserve identity across weapon categories. Large assault rifle magazines are now capped at 60 rounds to ensure LMGs retain their role as the definitive high-capacity weapons. You won't have 80-round rifle mags anymore. Pump-action shotguns equipped with slug ammo can one-shot headshot within their maximum range. Now, typically, that's only like 5 or 6 meters at the best, so it'll be super limited, but that's going to make the close-range meta incredibly cool because most people will probably go for SMGs because they're not accurate enough with slugs, but those who are accurate can be crazy strong up close, and that rewards precision and positioning with high risk, high reward payoff, as I just said. Core attachment categories have been reworked to support a wider variety of playstyles. Suppressors now reduce visual recoil, making them competitive options for players who prefer stealth. Stocks have also been redesigned to help reinforce distinct identities. Mobility-focused stocks now improve handling and strafe for players who favor fluid and aggressive movement. Heavier stocks lean further into steadiness for players who want that controlled style. Recoil-focused attachments have been completely rebalanced. Players who want strong recoil control now must invest multiple attachments to reach previous levels of stability. So if you want that no recoil laser beam, you're going to have to grab a barrel with control, maybe a muzzle or a compensator, an underbarrel, maybe even a stock as well, and stack those. And you're going to have to sacrifice maybe some range or some velocity or some suppression in some cases, or mobility, furthermore. The benefits of the scale depend on the weapon's base recoil, which means that high recoil weapons gain more from these attachments than low recoil weapons. A stat called recoil stabilization has also been reintroduced more prominently than before on select attachments to give players even finer control over weapon behavior during sustained engagements. Obviously, we'll be testing a lot of this stuff once the integration drops. Rifle barrels now come in 2 primary varieties. Long-range barrels that help you stay on target and land hits at greater distances. They are balanced by slower ADS speeds and slower movement. There's mid-range barrels that reduce visual and horizontal recoil to stay on targets. They do trade off velocity and aim walking speed to reinforce their mid-range identity there, so that's interesting. SMGs now feature barrels designed for specific types of engagements. A new mid-range barrel helps close the gap between SMGs and rifles by improving damage consistency at a distance with a slight mobility reduction. Short barrels are tuned for high mobility and hipfire focused playstyles, and ADS speed barrels provide quicker ADS and reduced visual recoil at the cost of strafe. The result is a weapon category that can shift between fast close quarters builds and controlled hybrid setups for like sniper support if you're more interested in that. Snipers have been refined to feel even more rewarding for long-range specialists. Select barrels now provide flinch resistance and reduced idle sway. These benefits give players greater stability when holding angles and further reinforce the sniper identity there. Not much talk on one-shots though. In addition to all the changes that we've made to weapons and attachments, we're going to be regularly updating the rotation of items found in ground loot. One notable change that we made to ground loot is the removal of pistols, which we expect to lend to more satisfying recoveries, so hopefully just in general better ground loot availability. Altogether, the Warzone weapon and attachment overhaul during the Black Ops 7 year reflects a clear evolution in sandbox philosophy. The new system rewards experimentation, precision, and intentionality. Every attachment is designed to contribute meaningfully to a player's playstyle and performance by prioritizing trade-offs instead of the all-purpose dominance and pairing that with frequent shakeups. Our intent is to keep the meta fresh, diverse, and skill-driven throughout the year. So I really like the sound of this. This just should ideally mean the Warzone meta, and there will always be a meta regardless of how good the weapon balancing is or not. The Warzone meta seems like it's going to be far more fresh than in years past. Now, it is going to be up to them to actually deliver on these promises and do it beyond, you know, just the first season or two. And when it is like the slower time of the year in the summer, the early fall, when things are kind of dying down, if they're still going to keep up with this philosophy of consistent updates and keeping things fresh, or if it falls off over time, that's gonna, you know, be obvious and telling there. But hopefully it just means good things for the year going forward. And this is just their focus on the weapons and the balancing there. There's even more stuff being focused on beyond this with general gameplay and content and things of that nature. But that said, that is gonna wrap things up for this one. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, you want to ensure you're always in the know for everything going on in COD, be sure to hit that sub button as well. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.